Judges Corner is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the best online retailer for Magic the Gathering singles and sealed product, and gatheringmagic.com, your place to explore the game. Now it's time for Judges Corner.
Hey, thanks for watching another mechanic review episode of Judges Corner. Today we're going to be reviewing the mechanics of Dragons of Tarkir. We're going to start by taking a look at some of the old, some of the new, and some of the mega mechanics that the set provides. Fate Reforged brought about new mechanics to the Mardu and Abzan clans, now controlled by their Dragon Lords, Kolagon and Dramoka, respectively. The dash mechanic of clan Kolagon allows players to cast creatures at any time they normally could, but for their alternative casting cost of dash. A dashed-in creature has haste, and will return to its owner's hand at the end of the turn, if it's still around on the battlefield. Bolster is the mechanic of clan Dramoka, that allows players to increase the power and toughness of a creature, with the least toughness, by placing a number of +1/+1 counters on the creature equal to the number on bolster. If there would be a tie between toughness, the player picks one of the creatures to bolster. The bolstered creature is also selected upon the resolution of the spell or ability, and bolster doesn't target. So, if your intended creature to bolster is not around when it would resolve, you simply bolster something else instead, if you can. A clear-cut example would be like if we had an Elvish Mystic and a Courser of Crufix in play, and we played Honor's Reward, but our opponent responds by playing Wild Slash on our weakest creature, the Elvish Mystic. When Honor's Reward would go to resolve, we'd still bolster our weakest creature, which in this case is now the Courser of Crufix, turning it into a 4/6 Centaur. Clan Ojutai has found Cunning in the mechanic Rebound, an ability found on instants and sorceries that allows a spell cast from your hand to be recast again from the exile in your next upkeep for free. It's important to note that the spell must be cast from your hand in order for it to have Rebound, and countering a spell would not only counter the spell, but also stop the spell's rebound effect from occurring. If your spell with Rebound does resolve, you exile the spell as it resolves, and the delayed triggered ability set up by Rebound will trigger during your next upkeep, and when this does occur, you'll have the option to cast it for free or never cast it at all at that time. When you do choose to cast the Rebound spell from exile, the card goes to your graveyard after it resolves, just like any other spell. If you choose not to cast it, it just remains in exile forever. Since Rebound is casting your spell for free, it counts towards any prowess, triggers, or storm count. This also means your free Rebound spell can be countered, like any other normal card from your hand. Clan Silumgar continues their ruthlessness through Exploit, an ability found on some cards that allows you to sacrifice a creature in order to gain some additional ability from them. When Exploit is triggered, you may choose to sacrifice a creature. This means you can sacrifice some other creature and get the Exploit effect, or you can be truly ruthless by sacrificing the very creature offering up the exploit. You can also opt not to sacrifice anything at all, since Exploit says may. For example, when I have Sidisi enter the battlefield, her Exploit ability triggers. This is where players can respond before the ability of Exploit resolves. If there's no response, then I choose a creature to sacrifice and it automatically happens. This will trigger the second ability on Sidisi that will go on the stack. This means you can actually sacrifice Sidisi herself and get her second ability of tutoring a card. Now let's step back and change the scenario. When I have Sidisi enter the battlefield, her Exploit ability triggers. This is where players can respond before the ability of Exploit resolves. If a player does respond and kills my Sidisi, the Exploit trigger that's still on the stack can still let you sacrifice a creature, but because Sidisi is no longer on the battlefield, her second triggered ability won't trigger. Thus, you won't get to tutor for a card. It's important to note that you can't exploit more creatures than the card allows you to exploit, and sacrificing a creature to some other effect will not count towards exploit. Finally, we have the Atarka clan mechanic, Formidable, a savage upgrade to Ferocious. Formidable lets you gain some additional effect or ability if you control creatures with total power 8 or more. This means if all your creatures' power add up to 8 or more, then you'll get the Formidable effect. The triggered abilities with Formidable use the previously seen intervening if clause, meaning that you have to control creatures with 8 or more power before the effect could even trigger, and then you need to still have 8 or more power among creatures you control when the effect goes to resolve. So if you have a Stampeding Elkherd attacking with an Airy Bowmasters that was played normally and not megamorphed, you would have 8 total power and the herd's Formidable ability would trigger. This then gives your opponent a chance to respond to the Formidable trigger by stopping the trigger from resolving, by perhaps killing the herd or reducing your total power in creatures you control to less than 8. If the opponent does nothing to your herd's formidable trigger, then it resolves and your creatures all gain trample until end of turn. Another neat thing to note is that a creature's power can go below 0, and this will affect the outcome of the formidable check. For example, if we pinned a stampeding elk herd to the earth, the total power and toughness of the herd would now be -1/5. This means you would have to add 9 more power among creatures you control for its formidable ability to trigger. Formidable activated abilities only require 8 or more power to activate them, and unlike their triggered counterparts, they do not require 8 or more power when their ability goes to resolve. They simply activate and resolve like other normal activated abilities. Last, we have Megamorph, a new take on the Morph ability. Megamorph is identical to Morph in every way, and even while face down, the Megamorph is just considered an ordinary Morph card. But the difference is when you flip over a Megamorph. Turning a Megamorph card face up is like a regular Morph in that it's taking a special action on the card. But with Megamorph, you get an additional +1/+1 counter, and sometimes an additional ability. If you manifest a Megamorph, you'll get the +1/+1 counter if you flip it over for its Megamorph cost, but not if you flip it over for its manifest cost. Speaking of special actions, flipping a face-down card face-up doesn't use the stack. So if you Megamorph something, it'll have that +1/+1 counter on it before anyone can ever respond. And don't forget to reveal your Morphs, Manifests, and Megamorphs whenever they leave the battlefield, or when the game ends. Well, that's it for our mechanic episode of Dragons of Tarkir. Make sure to stay tuned, where we'll cover more rules-related questions related to Dragons of Tarkir in the future. And if you have any questions about this episode, or any other questions in general, you can always send us an email at judgescorner@gatheringmagic.com. Or leave a comment below, and myself or someone else will be happy to get back to you as soon as possible. And if you like this video, we really like it if you like it. It helps us out a bit. Until next time, make sure to shuffle thoroughly, play at a reasonable pace, and have fun.